So we just take up a steady standing stance. The idea with the Wednesday morning class is that it can be done standing in this posture, which is great. But also it can be done sitting down. So sometimes I suggest to people, perhaps if you want to have a chair behind you, you can just stand for a while and then sort of sit down afterwards and just take the weight off. The other possibility is even lying down. It doesn't really matter what physical position you're in. That is all dependent on your own physical ability, as it were. But the standing posture is quite a useful one if you can sustain it. And so the idea is that when we stand at a bus stop, we tend to stand with our knees really sort of locked back, and we tend to, lean against anything we can, or, sort of put a ham on top of, some sort of surface just to kind of like take the weight off. We're constantly trying to take the weight off wherever we can. It's rare that we stand, especially for an hour, in, a static posture, but that has its own power. It's bringing ourselves to the very, simple but quite challenging idea that we shouldn't move our body too much. It's definitely not completely immobile, but it's also not moving much, as it were. And so we have our feet at a nice shoulder width posture, so generous and wide. We have the knees bent, and the idea is that as the tailbone sits down, we often have this image that the Chinese teachers say of sitting down on a dining chair. So for instance, if I bring my dining chair over, the idea that from sort of standing, I'll try and make this work, from standing to kind of sitting down is not much different. It's the same kind of feeling, with the tailbone dropping down and the knees bent. So I'm in a much more exaggerated stance than normal, but you get the general idea that the back stays completely straight, and as you sit down, the back would still be in exactly the same posture. And so what we're trying to achieve is that kind of idea with our standing posture of the same thing, of a nice straight back with the knees slightly bent. So from this wide posture, we drop down a little bit and we just sit the tailbone downwards. The next stage from sitting the tailbone downwards is tucking the tailbone forwards. So there's a terrible idea that, we might have to swing the tailbone all the way to the front and lift it up so that it become kind of hollow in the center here. Not what we're thinking of at all. Sitting down and just tucking the tailbone forward a tiny shade. It might be as little as half a centimeter, something like that. But all that's happening here is that when our tailbone goes backwards, the lower back closes. When our tailbone moves forwards, the lower back straightens up. So the lower back is naturally concave, but with a little tuck of the tailbone forwards, the lower back becomes much straighter. So we can put our hands on the lower back and just move our tailbone backwards and feel the lower back close, if you like, and then move our tailbone slightly towards the front and feel that lower back straighten up. So this is the idea of tailbone tucked forwards and sitting down. There's almost like an idea of a circular motion in this area. Tailbone moves a little bit forwards. Between the legs, Hoi Yin lifts up. The energy field moves slightly backwards, tailbone sits down. So we have this forwards, up, backwards, down, which is basically described as a circle. So let yourself sit down, let your tailbone move a shade forwards, lift Hoi Yin between your legs, and that's just a very soft, gentle tightening in the area of the perineum. And then thinking of the Ming Men, think of the lower Dantian energy field, just moving slightly towards the back. In other words, it's sort of slightly tuck your tummy in, sit down, tailbone forwards, lift Hoi Yin. Slowly we get ourselves into this idea, a little circular movement here. It's not dissimilar at the top of the spine, the chin moving backwards towards the spine. So if you have your chin jutting forwards, the lower neck is really, really closed. If we lift up by Hui and tuck the chin backwards, suddenly this part of the spine becomes straight. So now tucking the tailbone has straightened this bit, and tucking the chin has straightened the top a bit, the upper bit. And so what happens there is that your spine then becomes as straight as it's ever going to be. Tailbone gently forwards, chin gently backwards, lovely straight spine. And then in theory, the arms should just sort of hang down with the middle fingers probably sort of in line with your seam of your trousers, as it were. I mean, I've got terribly a sort of a sunken chest slightly, so I always have to remind myself, lift by way up, sorry, lift the breastbone up and let the arms hang down by the sides. So in a normal setting, your shoulders should just be allowing the arms to hang down by the seam. You know, I can be a bit sort of, I've been working on computers so much, I can be a bit sort of sunken here. So I just remind myself just to straighten up a little bit. What I'm not doing is doing sort of to attention with my chest out. I'm just bringing my chest back into a position it should normally be in. Don't slouch is the sort of thought that goes through my mind there. Okay, so we've got this idea of our standing posture. We've got the idea that if we had a chair behind us, we could just lower ourselves gently down and sit down on the chair. And this is a very sort of extreme version of standing Qigong, which is very good for activating all of the thighs and calves and getting the legs strong. But it takes a while to sustain some standing posture like this. So we're just going down half an inch, down an inch, tailbone slightly tucked, body relaxes. So we find our own perfect posture for our standing meditation. So I've kind of given up the word meditation these days. I prefer to use the word contemplation, really, because what I do when I do my practice is that I've long been examining the idea of who am I? Long been asking the question, who am I? And so if you're digging into this idea of looking at the patterns of your life, figuring out what makes you tick, figuring out who you really are, then meditation is not the place for that. So just to discuss what I mean by that, there's the first phase of doing our Qigong, where we're doing the physicality of it, but we tend to find that our mind is still kind of roaring along. You know, you're standing here listening to me doing these exercises, and you know, something reminds you about, you know, what you need to do at 11 o'clock, and then what will you have for lunch, and have you got anything in the fridge, and you know, and then the mind gently sort of spirals off into 100 tasks. Or I say something and it reminds you about something you'd heard in the past, and that reminds you of a person, and that brings back up another problem from a relationship in the past with that person, and then you think, I wonder what they're doing now, and then suddenly you realize that your mind has, you know, one little word has sent your mind spiraling off into a sort of crazy place. So Qigong is like that when we first start. It's very, very easy for us to be doing the physicality, but also for us to not be present. So we really have to find a way to bring ourselves back into the present. So one of the simplest tools I use is just a single breath. When you catch your mind having spiraled off to Sainsbury's, take a gentle breath in. And then just imagine settling everything down into your belly as you breathe out. And then gentle breathing. So I use a sort of an image for myself. I imagine that there's a channel that runs up my nostrils into the center of my brain, right into the very core of the brain. And as I breathe in, I imagine the qi going into the center of the brain and kind of illuminating the center of my brain. And then as I breathe out, I imagine the qi going down through the dantians all the way into the belly and settling down there. So I have this very sort of simple technique, which is just breathe in. As you breathe out, let the qi all the way down into the belly. And then I just keep breathing and imagine the qi deep inside the belly. So that's the next question is, what does lower dantian look like? So what does this energy field actually look like? Because, you know, the reason I seek an image for lower dantian is because if I can concentrate my mind into looking at this part of the body, as it were, I can hold my thoughts in my body. I can keep my mind from straying away just by sort of almost like giving it a process, a task. And so sometimes I say to my students, you know, what does lower dantian look like to you? Perhaps it's like a beautiful marble that sits deep in the center, you know, one of those lovely old big marbles with the sort of funny design in the middle. Perhaps it looks like a sort of a glowing light, like a pilot light. Perhaps it looks like an ember burning in a fire. Perhaps it looks like, and just fill in the dots for yourself, what does lower dantian look like? Perhaps it's not small, perhaps it doesn't fill the entirety of your belly. And that's kind of what we're working towards, this idea that we might feel qi filling this entire space down here, that it might feel sort of perhaps warm or kind of full. Those are often kind of words that people use to describe lower dantian. To be fair, it doesn't have to feel warm or full. Don't think that because you don't get sensations of lower dantian that it's not working. Don't lay that on yourself. Okay, so here's the process. Finding the right standing posture. Qi flows better through your body when you're in the perfect standing posture. It's going to flow anyway, but you can maximize it by bending the knees and tucking the tailbone, stretching the spine, drawing chin back, head up into the blue sky, feet connecting into the earth. So now you've optimized your stance. Quieten your mind. Now you've set the scene for healing. So here we are in this situation where we're trying to quieten the mind down. We've got the body in the optimum posture. What goes beyond that? So I think the next phase of that is keeping the mind steady for a period of time. And that, I think, is the definition of meditation. I think that if we can hold our mind in this steady place, bring our mind into a kind of nice neutral place where it's not churning over. Okay, so let's just look at that. The benefits of meditation. As we quieten the mind, the thought processes that are required to process information still. The overthinking in our brain comes to a stop. The strength to control everything around us slowly halts as we give way to just standing. And suddenly, we find that we're using much less energy. And what's actually physically happened in the body is that we've moved from this kind of active nervous system into a passive nervous system, akin to sleep. And so that's one of the reasons we need to sleep, is because of the healing and cleaning processes that take place whilst we sleep. The same can be triggered by standing in a quiet, meditative state. Now we've got the qi flowing through the body in the best possible way. And now we've got the mind switched to neutral or turned off. And suddenly the body flips over into healing mode. So we'll just take a little divergence here and talk about Madame Wang, who some of you will have heard of before. But I encountered Madame Wang, this fabulous, statuesque Chinese woman who, in her 60s, she looked like she might be part of the Peking Opera. She was just an astonishingly beautiful woman with a sort of sculptural stance and face. In her 40s, she'd got breast cancer. She'd known Jian Shi, my friend, and his center in Hainan in China. And so she'd gone there and she'd practiced Qigong diligently every day. She'd taken off, 6 months or a year from her high stress job, and she practiced standing every day in this still place, letting her body naturally trigger its healing responses, drawing the qi from the universe into her body to heal herself. She's the most dedicated person I've come across. She spent 2 hours every morning before breakfast and 2 hours every evening before dinner, standing like a mountain, never moving, in this perfect Qigong state. And she healed herself of breast cancer. It just disappeared. It only took a few months before it was gone. Her next move was to go straight back into business. She went straight back in at the top of a company. I think maybe it was Land Rover and Jaguar in China. And she was in this stressful environment. And about 10 years down the road, she had breast cancer again. And then she said that it was then that it dawned on me what stress was doing to me, how ill it was making me. And I realized that that was it. So she quit everything. She left. She went back to Hainan Island. When she arrived there, she said to Janshir, I've come back because I've got breast cancer again. He said, don't worry, we can heal that. And so they worked away, her doing her standing meditation and just being in this lovely healing center. Within 3 weeks, all of the lumps in her breast had gone, completely disappeared. And then, as Janshir chatted to her, he discovered that she was an insomniac. And so they said, oh, let's work on that as an idea. And so it took another 3 weeks before she was sleeping like a baby. All the stress had gone out of her body, and she was able to sleep 7 hours a night without waking. She said it was such a relief in her life. And then it transpired that she'd become addicted to painkillers. As if there wasn't enough with cancer and insomnia, he discovered that she was also taking painkillers on a regular basis, which had become part of the sort of the, I think, cancer process, but she'd just become addicted to them. So they worked on that. And after another 3 weeks, she was no longer addicted to anything. And then she stayed on. I think she'd been a teacher at the center for about 3 or 4 years by the time that I arrived. And that was her new life. Standing every day, deep, deep healing state. She was in fantastic health, having cured herself from breast cancer twice. So if you doubt the power of standing with a quiet mind, then sorry, you'd be wrong, as it were. Or just let's say, don't doubt that. So dedication, yeah, diligence, that was one of the parts of the story. But the standing is the other part of the story. And the question is, what happens to the mind? Okay, so we need to discover how to create this quiet mind. But that's not the final stop. And it seems for a lot of paths, let's say, that's the ultimate place. Sit in total silence, for 10 hours a day doing Vipassana. And wow, what an amazing meditator you are because you can sit for 10 hours. Well, I think that's one stop before the end. I think you're getting off too early. I think you're not going all the way. I think what we need to do is to learn to quieten the mind, but what comes beyond that? The next stage is being in this still state, discovering who you are, discovering what it is that made you chronically ill, discovering it is how you peel away the layers, discovering how you return yourself back to perfect health by using your connection to consciousness. So I think that's where we go next. And all of it takes practice and all of it takes time. Because you might think to yourself, well, I can only stand for 10 minutes before I have to sit down. Doesn't matter. The other thing that I have to tell you is about your mind. Very often, we're going to do our warm-up exercises in a minute, but very often we do our warm-up exercises. Maybe we won't even bother this morning. Perhaps you can just do your warm-up exercises on your own afterwards. It's a peculiar class where we don't start off with some physicality, but it seems that we've already got into this nice state. So let's just stay here. Okay, so back to my discourse. Yeah, the warm-up exercises are very good because getting the chi flowing around the body is an important part of our awakening the body in the morning. However, there's another side to it. The warm-up exercises generally last 15 or 20 minutes for a reason. The reason is that it takes generally 15 or 20 minutes for our mind to stop. So there are 4 recognized phases of meditation. The first phase is called chaos. And it's not really that surprising. it's just such a busy mind and there's things going on and it doesn't want to settle, and you, oh my goodness, I can never do this meditation stuff. It's so difficult. It's so hard, blah, blah, blah. And the mind chunters on in the background because it doesn't want to be quiet. The thing that your ego fears the most is you being silent. So we find ourselves in this kind of way, just accepting the fact that the mind is going to quietly talk. The more you practice, the shorter this period becomes. And so experienced meditators, can find themselves into that state almost immediately, or perhaps after 5 minutes. It used to take me 20 minutes. Now I think it probably takes about sort of 7 or something like that before my mind will start to give up the fight and relax. But I still understand that there's that sort of chaos phase where the mind wants to do anything else but practice this nonsense. Why do we have to stand still? Oh gosh. So the mind struggles and fights. But just know that if you hang in there, the mind will gently start to quieten. And then it moves into a second stage. And once or twice I've experienced this in a very sort of physical way. It's almost been like a mist rolling across my brain. And I think that perhaps that's a chemical reaction that I'm experiencing there. I think that, in the same way that sleep gently overcomes you, that in the same way, there's some sort of chemical wave in the brain that gently percolates its way through and allows the brain just to quietly settle. And so I can't describe it as in any other way, except than watching fog rolling across the landscape, perhaps towards you, or mist, gently, driving towards the mist, walking towards the mist. There's no real other explanation for it. That's exactly how it felt. It was just from this kind of frenetic noisiness into a sort of more gentle, clouded state. And that state doesn't last very long. It's a kind of liminal state that hangs there between noise and calm. And then beyond that misty state is this proper meditative state where we settle into it and we relax and our mind becomes quiet and still. Our body flips over into healing mode. And we can just hold it for a little while and stay in this soft, empty state. After the soft, empty state, there's the reset phase. Because from 5 or 10 minutes of being nice and quiet, suddenly something will pop up in your head. Bing, and this thought suddenly arrives out of nowhere and you're thinking about it and you're turning it over, and then suddenly realize your meditation's gone. The brain's a very funny place. Sometimes it'll say to you things like, "Oh, aren't you good at meditating? You're doing really, really well." And then you think to yourself, yes, I am, aren't I? I'm really enjoying my meditation. I'm doing very well. And then you realize that you're not meditating anymore. Your brain has tricked you into engaging in a conversation about meditation rather than actually doing it. And you think, oh, blimey, there we go. Caught me off guard. And then what's required is the reset phase. You drop out of your meditation and you gently loop back round to the beginning, where you just know that it's going to be noisy for a few minutes, certainly not as long as it took the first time. But you just accept that it's going to be noisy, and you just gently bring yourself back to your body, bring yourself back to your centeredness, bring yourself back. And eventually the brain will sort of go and float back into this misty state and then back into the meditation state. So don't worry. All the people who say, I can't meditate, it's because they haven't tried to stay there, and they don't know that there is this period where it seems like nothing will ever give up. Perhaps your ego is very strong. Perhaps it might take you half an hour. But just try staying with that state. Just try working your way through. So once the meditative state becomes fairly solid, something that we can rely upon for a little while, a stillness that we find. Once we can rely on our standing posture, let's just speak to that for a moment. Standing for an hour, wow, it has its challenges. Sometimes the soles of your feet suddenly feel like they're on fire and you think, oh my God, I can't stand anymore. My feet are so sore. I remember when I first started doing Qigong, it was only standing practice. There was nothing else. I used to arrive at Master Lamb's studio and we'd stand in a massive great circle, about 20 of us. And that was it. He'd just say, take up your standing posture. And you'd take up this posture that we're standing in. And then he'd go off into his office and he'd start doing his paperwork. He'd leave something terrible on the stereo. The Chinese National Sinfonia plays ABBA's greatest hits. That was part of the process. It was part of breaking you down. You'd have Mamma Mia blaring into your ear and trying to just get past that. Trying to get past the difficulty of standing. Trying to get past the difficulty of noise and distraction to bring yourself into a calm state. My feet used to hurt like hell. Oh. And if you moved, he'd give you a bit of a sideways look, tell you not to move. He'd say, no moving. And everybody sort of tense up again. Doesn't help. I say, move. I say, move your feet a little bit. Just shift them around if you need to. Just keep the blood gently flowing. Sore knees? Yeah, sure. Lower down a little bit. Raise up a little bit. Change your height. Gently try and sustain the change of height for a minute or two. Muscles don't feel strong enough. Just go down and sit down into your posture for 1 minute. You'll find your body naturally just raises itself up anyway to get out of the struggle. Sore lower back. Okay, try adjusting your tailbone. Tip it forwards a tiny bit and see if you can stand like that for a few minutes. Sore in the middle of the back. Try lifting your breastbone up a tiny bit. Try moving your shoulders back slightly. My hands have automatically come up in front of my chest, but the standing posture is just to have them on your belly. So sometimes if your shoulders and back are sore, you can just rest your hands on your belly and it helps a bit. Keep the neck long. Sometimes when we stand, our chin slowly sort of slumps down onto our chest and we end up staring at the floor. Try not to do that. Try to keep looking gently forwards. Eyes closed? Maybe. Eyes 3/4 closed? That's what I tend to do. I tend to leave a tiny little slot at the bottom where I can just gently see the floor below. I can just see my hands. But I can't see anything else. My vision is completely unfocused. Jaw? Well, don't clench the teeth together. Smile? Yes, if you can. Brow? Furrowed? No, thank you. Remember last week I was talking about teacher Ling. Imagine your two eyebrows like caterpillars walking away from each other. Lovely. Softening in the center of the brow. Soft jaw. Tongue? Well, it's supposed to touch the roof of the mouth. It naturally does that anyway. Just touch the roof of the mouth behind your teeth. You've already been standing for quite a long time now. 25 minutes. Very good. So just by standing in this static in inverted commas, because there's always kind of micro movements going on. Just by standing in the static posture, we've allowed the chi to really start flowing through the body. We've really opened up. We've really got the chi flowing well. You can do this in a sitting posture. You can do this in a lying posture. Just find out what works for you. So let's say that we're quite comfortable with the idea of getting the mind to quietly relax, that it's not too busy. Where do we go beyond meditation? How do we use the power of our consciousness to change things. So our consciousness is what has gently changed our bodies over the years, or likely subconsciousness is what has changed. Things that have happened to us, events, patterns, family, ties, whatever it might be, have changed our consciousness. And quietly inside our bodies, your subconsciousness has been muttering. Maybe Dad was always right about me not being good enough to do this, whatever that might be. Maybe Mum was right. I am always just disorganized and badly, whatever. Maybe my grandpa was right, that I'd never find someone who loved me. Any number of little stories that your subconscious can gently mutter in the background. Yeah, whenever Joe said that to me, that really hurt me, but I think he was probably right. These sort of stories that we hold them deep inside. We retell ourselves these stories. I remember reading one sort of spiritual book, and the guy was talking about, he said, this terrible relationship that he'd had with a lady. She was incredibly, her life was in chaos. She was an attractive person, but her life was in chaos. She hated everything. She hated everyone. She was cross and blah, blah, blah. But he'd been sort of drawn towards her. And he said that she had a light blue sports car with a convertible roof. And they'd had this kind of fiery time, and he thought he was in love with her. And then she had cheated on him, and then, said terrible things to him, and the relationship had broken up. And that was, 10 years ago. But he said, just occasionally I'll be driving along the highway and I'll see one of those blue sports cars go past, perhaps a blonde lady driving the wheel. And I'll immediately think about her, and I'll immediately think about the things she said to me, and I'll immediately think about the pain that it caused me, and I'll chew that over inside, and I'll feel these emotions running through, the hurt that it caused, and the loss and the upset, and how it never made me feel I could love again, blah, blah, blah. And he said, it was just a sports car driving past, but there's this avalanche of detail goes pouring through. One little visual trigger is enough to set off a vast story. So I said, sometimes I wasn't even aware that the story was still there, but I was still holding that hurt. And then it would suddenly blindside me. Out of nowhere, a car would pass and I'd think, oh God, what about so-and-so? And the whole story would rush through his life again. What do we do about things like that? Well, for him, the root of the story was very, I was going to say very obvious. It was this person who'd hurt him. But perhaps the root of the story goes deeper than that. Why did he find himself attracted to a dangerous, unhappy person like that? Perhaps at some root level, he didn't truly believe that he deserved to be loved, that he was only allowed to have damaged partners take part in this, in his life. And so he picked up this stream of damaged people coming to him who continued to damage him in a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. The same root deep inside that he'd never looked at generated the same problem again and again. So a pattern deep inside him of not feeling worthy of being loved expressed itself again and again. Why am I not able to be loved is the next question. Where does that come from? So now I talk about this question, who am I? 3 words, tum tvat asi. That's the Sanskrit. Tum tvat asi is who am I? This ancient question So are you really the person who can't be loved? Are you really the person who's so deeply damaged by, or where does the root lie? Perhaps your father left when you were a little boy. Perhaps your mother didn't love you as a little girl. Perhaps some partner said to you, you don't know how to love, you'll never be a lover. But in fact, that was their problem, not yours, but you took it on. Now you start to see, who am I? Am I really the person who can't be loved? No, the answer is definitely no. Am I really the person who, I don't know, will never be rich? Am I really the person who will never be married? Am I really the person who'll never be free? Whatever these root causes are. So often we find that it comes down to love, money, parents. Have I really been abandoned by God? Tick off religion as well. Am I really stupid? I can't understand maths. Does that really make me stupid? Tick off school as another possible culprit for these patterns. Where do they come from? Who am I? Are you really the person who is stupid because you struggled to understand the shapes of maths? And yet you're still a beautiful artist. Are you really the person who can't be loved? Are you really the person? Are you really that person? So we look very deeply at these roots. You know yourself. The paving down your garden path, the crack where a dandelion sprouts out from it. You go along and you chop the top off the dandelion and you think, oh, that looks much better. 2 weeks, that dandelion is back, looking stronger, cheekier. You can't take the top off a problem. You have to take the root of that dandelion out. You have to get a long, pronged weed lifter and get right in to the depths and pull it out and remove it from its root. So we look at the question, who am I? To expose the root. Am I really the person who can't be loved? Expose the root. See that that is not true. Remove from the depths of you. Dig deep. Pull the roots out. So beyond meditation, there are little tools that can be used. Ask yourself the question, who am I? Another little tool we use for healing ourselves is just to bring ourselves into this very present space more effectively, and to allow the energy to flood around our body, to really examine our bodies at their deepest cause. So just bring your mind steadily inside Shen Ji Palace. Okay, so Shen Ji Palace is the same as upper Dantian. In through the third eye into the center of your brain, down from Bai Hui on the top of your head into the center of your brain. Yu Zhen on the back. If you do lift you up and port you down, you'll know we move our fingers all the way from the front round to the back and press that point. From Yu Zhen on the back into the center of your brain. There's an interesting little exploration you can do with your tongue as well. If you take your tongue from your teeth and work it along the roof of the mouth, all the way right behind to the soft palate, or drop the soft palate above, sometimes you can feel a little dimple in the roof of your mouth right at the back. from this point up into the center of the brain. So you have all these kind of ways of tracking into the very core of you. This area in more ancient times known as Shen Ji Palace. Shen being spirit, so Shen Ji Palace. So it's kind of like the spirit palace, if you like, deep in the center of your head, the source of you. I like to think of Shen Ji Palace. I like the idea of it being a palace. I like the idea of it perhaps having glass windows all around and the light inside shining out, perhaps like through stained glass. You can imagine somewhere like an abbey, dark at night, with the interior illumination shining out into the darkness through these beautiful stained glass windows. So I like to think of Shen Ji Palace being this beautiful palace. Deep inside, there's a light that illuminates the palace and it shines out through all of the palace windows. So we bring ourselves into Shen Ji Palace. Focus the mind in Shen Ji Palace. We can actually say the word Shen Ji. Shen Ji. So you say Shen Ji. So we're going to say Shen Ji 10, 20 times. And slowly, slowly, we're going to bring the tone inside the brain. So when you say it, you can pitch the tone up or down. You can say it as loud as you like or as quiet as you like. But what we're gently doing is we're finding the vibration of Shen Ji inside your head. So there are two voices in our body. One is our head tone and one is our body tone. So when you speak down here in your chest or up here in your head, so there's a kind of like a Shen Ji. So you can lift the tone up and take it into your head. Shen Ji. So already we're kind of starting to vibrate the brain. And it doesn't matter if you can hit a note or not. It doesn't matter how, your singing voice or your kind of like, humming voice is. It's of no interest at all. What's important is that we actually do it. And we start to feel this kind of vibration taking place in the core of the head. So I'm hoping that the sound is okay, that it's called real sound, original sound for musicians off, on. Okay, so hopefully it'll make a slightly sort of clearer tone. So let's try and work with this tone, Shen Ji, for a little while. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Try it higher or lower. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Keep going. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. make it slightly quieter as we go along. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Perhaps go into even quieter. Just say it inside your head eventually. Shen Ji. Shen Ji. Keep going. Gently observe the center of your head as you say Shen Ji quietly to yourself. Quietly notice the refinement of this consciousness, the gentle tone deep inside, only observing the subtle vibrations of Shen Ji. Observe the center of your head. Shen Ji Palace glows deep inside. Now imagine that it's possible to gently open your head out into the universe. Perhaps it's a bit like an observatory opening the door, like a telescope. And eventually you can start to expand out from the core of your brain. Just gently expand out into the space around you. Feel this refined, fine chi all around your workspace. A little bit further, find nature around you. Gently feel grass, trees, rocks, birds, animals. Just imagine a beautiful, huge tree of some sort, like a vast oak tree. Just imagine yourself standing there, like a field with a vast tree. Feel the energy of this space, of nature. Feel your ability to gently connect out, out, out. Use this beautifully refined chi to connect out beyond that. Blue sky, Dr. Pang's favorite idea. We can all think of a perfect blue sky day. Allow your consciousness to be open into the blue sky. Deeply connected with nature. Deeply connected with the blue sky. Deeply connected with the earth below. Your consciousness. Open, gentle, soft, and aware. Out in this wide consciousness. Feel it's possible for you to merge your consciousness with the consciousness of the universe. Feel that you can just become one with everything around you. No inside, no outside, just you and pure consciousness. Everything is one. No difference between you. Let's now imagine we can draw this pure consciousness back into our bodies. So from the vastness of the universe, the blue sky, nature around us, we gently start to bring this consciousness back into our bodies. So fill your brain, fill your head with this consciousness. Observe your head. Now draw this consciousness down into your neck. Observe your head and your neck dissolve into pure consciousness. Move this down into your upper chest, your shoulders, down your arms to your fingers. Imagine the consciousness of the universe throughout all of this area. Gently drawing this consciousness down into your chest, into your midriff, into your belly, down into your hips, tailbone. Imagine the whole of your spine, your ribs, and upper body. Your back especially. Don't forget about your back. Dissolved into this amazing consciousness. Allow it to roll down to your hips and knees, hips, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, whole body. Perfect. Filled with this awareness of the entire universe. Whole body. Now we say the tone shu. Chinese is XU, but we pronounce it as shu. Shu helps us to refine this chi in our body. Shu. Shu makes the inner space finer. This deep vibration in the body. Shu helps us to merge with this universal chi much more completely. Let's go more quietly inside. Go finer, go deeper, go quieter. Say Shu deeply inside your body, total silence. Observe the moment before Shu arises. There's this perfect moment before the tone Shu occurs to your body. This perfect stillness before the tone arises. Feel this perfect moment. Allow it to gently expand, healing through your whole body. When we say shu, everything becomes more pure, clearer, deeper. From this perfect, clear moment, you can allow the chi of the universe to filter through your whole body, healing you at the deepest level. The absolute purity of shu. Every cell of your body. That perfect moment of presence before shu arrives. Let's just gather our hands slowly back towards our bellies. You can just hold a little ball of chi on lower dantian. To this still, gentle place. This is where the true healing lies. The healing that you can bring throughout your entire life, through every aspect of your life. Allow yourself to heal at the deepest level of your core self. Feel that you can root out those core problems and remove them at the deepest level. And what is left is just the perfect, pure version of you. So sometimes it's nice in this posture just to collapse your hands on top of the belly, just put them on and hold them right on top of lower dantian and really feel lower dantian. When we've been out on a trip like this, it's very important to bring yourself back to your body, to really feel the physicality of your body once again, because you can really find yourself in a light, liminal, open space. So we start to bring ourselves back inside. We start to feel our body. We feel from the soles of our feet. We feel our legs. We feel our spine all the way up to our head. We feel our shoulders and our elbows down to our hands. We can place our hands in lower dantian and really feel the belly in lower dantian. Bring ourselves back into our bodies. But we can keep a little essence of this pure healing going deep inside. Let it be there all day long like a pearl deep inside your body, gently healing you. Let the hands gently rest down by your sides. Step on chi to bring your feet back into the standing posture. We'll go deeper with our shu meditation next week. Let's bring the hands into the prayer position and draw the hands up in front of the face. Draw the hands up over the top of the head. Expand up into the blue sky. Nice long stretch. And let the fingers open gently and let the hands expand down, gently down to shoulder height, a little scoop of the hands round to the front, and then send the chi deep inside. Allow this chi to gather deep inside your brain. All of the functions of your brain returning to perfect working order. Drift the elbows back down, let the hands come underneath the arms. Lightly touch Da Bao. Send the chi, middle dantian. Fill middle dantian with chi. An abundance of energy deep inside. All of the organs of your body returning to perfect working order. Let's gently drift the hands back behind. Back of the hands move towards the front of the body. Turn the palms over with a flourish. Send a wave of chi out into the blue sky. Gently draw this chi back for your belly. Drawing this energy, holding it deep inside. Lower dantian chi, abundant with energy. Blood and chi flowing well. Can you imagine you go through your life for such a long time and you never know about this whole extra energy process that you can feed into your system to bolster you, to make you strong, to make you feel well? Well, howla, you've learned now. This needs to be our education systems, does it not? Okay, so we gently turn some circles round lower dantian, gathering and holding all this amazing energy inside. Your personal store that you've worked hard to build up and keep deep inside for when it's required. And then 3 times in the opposite direction, just reminds your body back to daily mode. Exercise is finished. Hold ourselves inside with all this lovely chi, but kind of be aware of the outside world once again. And we can let our hands drift down by the sides. Slowly open the eyes, wiggle the fingers, move the toes, put a smile on our faces, have a little stretch out. If you'd be kind enough to unmute yourselves, we can all say howla together. Very good. Okay, so hands up in the air. 1, 2. Ha-la. 1, 2. Ha-la. Last time. 1, 2. Ha-la. Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Really nice to see you here today. And yes, next week you go deeper into the whole of the, it's called Mingjue meditation. Nice to see you. This will go up online. If you fancy practicing it again, please do. See you soon. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.